So here's our next practitioner's lecture. This time we're going to focus on the director. You could say that one way to approach an introduction to theater class is to simply answer the question, what the heck does the director do? Directors do a lot of stuff. As we briefly glanced at in the history lecture, the director is the latest practitioner to emerge as a practitioner. Long ago, well, not horribly long ago, the person who would direct the show would be maybe the playwright, maybe the manager of the theater company, and the process of creating a theater production was much more simplified than we think of it today. Today, the director is the guy or girl for whom with whom all the bucks stop. The person who is responsible for all the decisions, doesn't do everything, but is the one who is responsible for creating the vision of the play. Now, in the professional theater, you also deal with producers who have a lot of input over what the director does, but generally when we're talking about just artistically, the director is the one who molds and shapes the entire production in ways that most people who have not been involved in a theater production aren't aware of, and even sometimes people who have been. There are broadly considered two types of directors. There's the auteur and there is a traditional director. The traditional director is what you think of when you think of a director. An auteur, I will just throw this idea out there briefly. The auteur director is a director who uses all the elements equally, who is creating a theatrical experience, who is not faithfully telling the story as he or she sees it as written by the playwright. An auteur director sees that the script is no more important than the lights or the acting style or their interpretation. An auteur director will take all elements, all theatrical tools they have at their disposal, be it a script, all the lighting design, all the design aspects, costuming, set, the actors, the location, the venue, and everything, and create their own production. Auteurs often, understandably, use texts that are no longer copywritten, so that it is legal for them to cut and rearrange and reshape the play to tell a story that they want to tell. That is very rare. You're probably not going to have the opportunity to see the product of an auteur director's work unless you're in quite a big town or unless you see some experimental work that's done at possibly colleges or at universities around. And that does happen. I have functioned as an auteur director. An example is a show that I created. I based there's a ancient Greek play called Iphigenia in Aulis. It's about Agamemnon sacrificing his daughter to the gods so that the winds can blow so that he can sail across to Troy and fight the war. An auteur director will have something they want to say, and they will manipulate all their theatrical elements in order to focus on that. Well, this was at a time when we were just beginning the Iraq wars, and my brother was being called over, and I was exploring questions of what do we sacrifice in order to go to war. So I took many different translations of Iphigenia and Aulis and made the language very contemporary and changed it from this idea of the chorus, who's the main character, in one of the main characters. There's the chorus of citizens in Aulis who are there usually to comment upon the action, but I turned them into sort of crazy, stupid townspeople who were just there because they wanted to see gore and blood. Anyway, I won't waste the time telling about the whole story, but I manipulated the text. I cast it among my students. We did it outside
in a theater space that looks a lot like an ancient Greek theater. This is when I was teaching in South Carolina. We did it outside. So it was just a reimagining of the play as seen through my eyes. And that's kind of what an auteur does. There'll probably be examples throughout this Intro to Theater course in which we look at the work of auteur directors. Anyway, so back to what we really think of directing. The traditional director, their source of inspiration is the text. They tell the story that the playwright wrote. Now, every good play, just as every different actor playing the same character will do it differently, every director is going to tell the same story in different ways. They may focus on different parts of the story. They may focus on different aspects of it. Some directors who have a stronger background in design, might focus on that as being the main source of their storytelling. Most directors have a very strong background in acting because you really have to be able to work with actors. So that's the difference between the two. The auteur creates their own event and the script is just one of those aspects. A traditional director tries to faithfully, without slavishly, telling the story that the playwright has written. The source of their inspiration is the play. So this this process that we're going to go through briefly incorporates all the theater practitioners, but I think of it as a process of directing. Just to reveal my own subjectivity, I am a director. That is primarily what I do is as a theater practitioner, and so I'm biased into thinking that that directing is the most important job in the theater, of course, and that directing is the most important thing you could do with your life. But here we go. First thing that happens is they examine the text. Now, where do they get the text? If you're a freelance director working around the country, you probably don't get to pick the play that you're going to direct. When I direct professionally, I hardly ever get the opportunity. The producer, company manager, artistic director comes to me and says, hey, here's this play, do you want to do it? I have submitted plays to theaters that I did end up directing, and I have submitted plays to theaters that I have not ended up directing. But it's a toss-up. When I direct in the academic setting, I'm probably the one who picked the play, but so it's a toss-up whether or not the director gets to choose their script. Professionally, I think it's surprising how often you don't get to, because directing a play that you don't really feel emotionally connected to can be a very laborious process. Anyway, first thing you do as a director is you read the play a whole lot. You become familiar with that play. Until about halfway through the rehearsal process, you know the play better than anybody. There is a point when the directors begin to know their characters better than you do, hopefully, but you are the one who is responsible for understanding how the play works structurally, as well as the sort of psychology of the characters, and defining what their actions are is very important. Question that the director will ask themselves is, what's the spine of the play? Meaning, what holds together? What is the central idea of this play? And also, what is the central conflict? All plays contain are made of conflict, and you need to know what the central conflict is. And there can only be one. Although there may be subplots, they should feed the main conflict. What's the main action of the play? What happens? And you develop a concept. You might begin with images or a metaphor for the play, but the word concept is thrown about a lot, and a lot of people don't fully understand what it means. But the concept can mean everything from, oh, I'm going to do Hamlet and place it on the moon and you're all going to be monkeys, which is my famous example. Or it can simply be, this is how we're going to tell this story in this space. It involves all aspects of the play, from design to acting style to the movement in the space and all that kind of stuff. So it's your job as the director to create the central core ideas that will
lead the production, that will everyone else who was involved in the production will base their decisions from. Early on, long before auditions, you should probably have some casting meetings. Now, let me be very clear that this process that I'm articulating here is how it works in the professional theater and in most theaters. Sometimes it doesn't always happen this way, but ideally this is what you would like to have happen. So first off, ideally you might know that you're directing the play a year in advance. Just to give you a sense of how prepared you need to be, you need to read that play once a week for a year. If you know less than a year, then you need to read it more frequently per week. And then as you get closer, then you're familiarizing yourself with it even more. You're doing a whole lot of research on the play and a whole lot of analysis of the play. Then so you're ready to go into design meetings, you can discuss coherently the look of the play. Now, let me be very clear, you are not telling your designers what to do. It's their job to design, and you want that. You want them to have input. But they don't just start from scratch. You have to all be telling the same story. So it's your job to come into the design meetings prepared to articulate your vision of this play. And then you have auditions. They say that 90% of directing a play is casting, and that is true. I speak from experience. The worst show I ever directed was because I did a crappy job casting the lead character. So you look for things from actors in rehearsal and in auditions, and then you make your casting choices. And then rehearsal starts. The process of rehearsal is pretty, it's different for every play, for every director, but there are certain things that should be part of all plays. There's table work. Table work is where the actors and the director sit around, read the play, and talk about it. They decide what story they're telling. They decide what are the given circumstances. They divide the play up into beats. They articulate the action of each beat and how each beat contributes to the overall shape of the play. There is a point where table work can last too long and you just get in your head, but it's important to do this work. If you don't have a good intellectual understanding of the play, when you get up on your feet, you're going to have to, and make a lot of discoveries, then you're going to have to redo a lot of stuff. So it's just a good idea to make sure that you understand the story before you get up on your feet and start working. And then there's usually a period of some type of improvisation. I don't mean standing around playing whose line is it anyway. And it could be something that doesn't resemble a traditional improv at all. The point of the improv phase is that you're exploring the script physically and you're not making decisions that you are committing to keeping. It's time to play around with the play, to discover it up on its feet. As a director, you rely on this period to give your actors the chance to get up and move around physically as their character, and they're going to come up with some great ideas that you are going to use in the production. Let me make another point very clearly, as I said before with the designers. A director does not simply just tell the other artists what to do. The director takes input from these people and shapes what they are contributing to the overall success of the production. That is very important. Any director who just wants to be, bossy and tell everybody what to do, you better be working with puppets, and you better be making your own puppets, because that's not the way good shows are put together. So we'll pause here. We'll finish up talking about directing in the next lecture.